It has been said by many film historians that no other genre encapsulates the zeitgeist of any given decade more than the Western genre. That once removed quality allows an artist an open sandbox to say some pretty dark things about modern society, without seeming too on the nose or preachy. Nowhere in history is this more evident than in the 1960s, the Vietnam War, Che Guevara, the peak of the hippie movement. It was a volatile and heavily politicized time, to say the least. Sure, there were wonderful films in the present that represented this as well, such as Easy Rider. But if you were looking for a film that represented the time period more than any other, you'd find it in quite an odd place. The spaghetti western movement, out of Italy. But really, I suppose it's not that odd at all. Sometimes you need an outsider's perspective on something to remove all of the noise and get a full view of it in Technicolor. The spaghetti western movement began in the 1960s in Italy. American-made westerns at this time were failing. This is not only because of the revolutionary time period, but also because many of them were becoming boring and formulaic. For example, the once superstar John Wayne was becoming old and jaded. The Italians, much like the illustrious Wu-Tang Clan 30 years later, took their influence from the existing Eastern cinema at the time, most notably Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah, 影2つ。いや、多分3つだ。
Get 3 coffins ready.
Huh?
They turned the West on its head. They made it more violent, more brutal, more amoral than ever before. The Western anti-hero was born. But most importantly, these films were more political than ever before. They asked deep questions about society. With the ability to hide these difficult topics under a layer of parable-like storytelling, they were able to tackle them more lightly, without ever seeming too preachy or over the top. The most common example of this is where they would use the Mexican-American and Civil War to both be used to make commentary on the brutality and senselessness of the Vietnam War.
Never seen so many men wasted so badly.
But there are countless examples of topics tackled, from the senselessness of racism to the amorality of capitalism as a whole. At the start, some critics wrote these films off as Italians ripping off American cinema. This, however, couldn't be further from the truth. The Italians seemed to put more effort into realism than American studios had in a very long time. It is often claimed that the 3 best directors of this movement are all named Sergio. Sergio Leone, Sergio Corbucci, and Sergio Sollima. Sergio Leone is often claimed as the reigning king of all the Sergios, whilst the other 2 are written off as, quote-unquote, the other Sergios. In fact, when Burt Reynolds was asked in talk shows about being the lead in Sergio Corbucci's Navajo Joe, he often recycled the same story, the punchline being that he got the wrong Sergio. However, famed director and film critic Alex Cox believes it's Burt Reynolds' greatest film, and I personally couldn't agree more. In fact, in retrospect, perhaps he was just a little jealous he didn't blow up like Clint Eastwood did under Leone's work. Sergio Corbucci is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and whilst being considered in second place to Sergio Leone is definitely no insult, it's truly an unfair statement to put on Corbucci, who is a master of his own. His influence on modern cinema is astounding. It can most recently be seen in the works of Quentin Tarantino. Corbucci might be the darkest and most brutal director of all time. He made westerns feel like punk rock. He was a radical leftist and he had no problem showing the world how brutal human beings can get. He was heavily political. And many characters that might be considered heroes among his contemporaries, such as bounty killers for example, were shown as the brutal thugs that they really were in Corbucci's work. Nowhere is this more on display than his widely praised and most controversial film, The Great Silence. Film considered so nihilistic by the studio owner at the time, Zarel F. Zunnig, that it was barred from American release for 50 years, and its first official United States screening occurred in late 2018. Darrell felt the film was pure nihilism. He was wrong, of course. The film is dripping in subversive political commentary. Released in 1968 at the peak of the counterculture, and in reaction to the assassination of civil rights activist Malcolm X, one of Sergio's biggest heroes. This film is not only a subversion and critique of the classic Western trope of a lone gunman cleaning up the town, but a brutal critique of modern-day capitalism. The primary antagonists are both bounty hunters. The leader of the gang, played by the renowned actor Klaus Kinski, in his most reserved performance of his career, as the chilling perfectionist Loco, who kills his victims and then pauses to tally them in his ledger book. A true capitalist entrepreneur. He is of course best friends with the bank owner in the movie's town, Snowy Hill, who, allegorically speaking, represents the corporate capitalistic greed of the real world. There's also a new town sheriff, and he's a complete fucking moron. He legit tries to punch Loco through the jail cell bars and fucks up his hand. In most westerns he'd be pure comic relief for his idiocy, and he is hilarious. However, he is gunned down by Loco, and really he represents the inefficiency of our real world authority figures. Early in the film, Loco kills a bounty, a young black man. As he rides away, he chortles to himself at the idea of a black corpse being worth as much as a white bounty.
Pete, what times we live in when a black's worth as much as a white man.
The wife of the black man decides to hire someone to kill Loco. Enter Silence, the film's hero. Silence shares superficial characteristics with other heroes from spaghetti westerns. For example, he is dressed in cool-ass black clothes, he can shoot faster than any other gunman, and most importantly, he is silent.
Well, so long, friend. I hope you'll be a little bit more talkative next time.
Much like Clint Eastwood in Leone's films, but he's not the quote-unquote strong, silent type. But Silence is in fact a mute, as a result of his throat being lacerated as a child. He actually doesn't speak a single word throughout the entire film. This is brutally dark when he attempts to scream in horrific pain near the end of the film, but nothing comes out. Silence has a reputation. He is the fastest shooter in all of the West. And for the right price, you can hire him to kill anyone that you would like him to. Of course, the most ironic part about all this is the price that he charges for this job is the same amount of money that Loco charges for each of his bounties, $1,000. The ending of this film is one of the most controversial and profound film endings of all time. In fact, while I was researching for this video myself, I found countless research papers analysing the ending of the film. So, I'm going to spoil the ending. So if you haven't seen the movie, please go watch it. Okay, so, at the end of the film, Loco's gang brutally attacks Silence and the black woman, and Silence is left on the brink of death. Loco then rounds up all of the defenseless and starving illegal immigrants and places them inside the saloon. And he says that he will personally execute every single one of them if Silence does not show up to fight it out. Of course, Silence, being the quote-unquote hero, shows up to fight it out. And then he is brutally fucking slaughtered, and quickly as well. And that was bad enough already, But because he attempted to draw his gun first, technically Loco didn't even break the law when he killed him. And then cherry on top, Loco and his gang fucking kill all of the helpless immigrants anyway. And that is the end of the movie. Yep, the end of the goddamn movie. See, I wasn't joking around when I said this film was dark. Not only is it dark, but Sergio Corbucci and his contemporaries had just spent the last decade of their careers creating these mythic-like, seemingly bulletproof Western heroes. He played off this expectation of the spaghetti Western genre to make a statement in the Great Silence. On the surface, it could easily be argued that this film is about how corporate power and capitalistic ideologies will always win, and no one can ever really fight back. And that Silence perhaps represents the real-life assassinations that inspired the film. And this is all very true, but there's more to this ending than that. Truth be told, Silence, he's portrayed as the classic Western hero, a Clint Eastwood type, but this is a hero through a circus mirror. Silence is in fact a horrible man. He claims to live by a code. For example, he only ever shoots in self-defense. But this really is only to stay within the law. He eggs people to draw their guns first, and when they do, not only will he kill them, he will often leave his victims with permanent disfigurements and disabilities. It's clear that he gets just as much pleasure as Loco does from maiming his victims. In fact, you could even argue that Loco is perhaps a better man, because he knows who he is and he never clings to some false notion of moral superiority. Above all else, this film is a commentary about how living by a code does not automatically absolve a person for their brutal behaviour. So whilst this film looks up to Corbucci's Marxist heroes, such as Che Guevara, for trying to make a better world, Corbucci is not going to absolve his heroes for all the brutal acts of torture and terrible things that they did in an attempt to get their way.
What's up, Jake Paulers? So I'm planning on using this channel to not only upload more of these video essays, but also my own films and music, because I am a SoundCloud sad boy. So if you want to see more of my garbage, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll disappoint you less than your dad did.